took theater into the classroom, and then also you're involved in mental health, and you got your master's in counseling and psychology. And wow.
Yeah. So I actually started in theater. So my background is in theater, and I started out thinking I was going to be a famous actress.
Don't we all?
And
Don't we all think?
don't we all? That's everybody's dream.
Yeah.
And when I realized that when I got to school for acting, and I was in the acting program, and I was realizing, you know what? I don't know that I really love this as much as I thought I did, but I did love theater, and I did love theater for social justice. And I'm really passionate about social justice and well-being. So I kind of shifted my focus and studied that a little bit more. And then I went into education and became a teacher, and then really focused on teaching theater and teaching acting, and then getting my counseling master's degree and focusing on drama therapy and how to use drama as a means to work with young people in particular. So children and youth, and really engage them in kind of a collaborative therapeutic process.
Yeah. So what is that? So I was trying to figure that out, like drama and therapy. Like, how do you marry the two? But I could see that because, like I told you a little bit ago, like I am a voice actor. So I just got into voice acting, and I've learned so much about myself and other people just going through the whole process of that particular type of acting, which is voice acting, which is really different than theater, stage, and all that kind of stuff, or on camera acting. But you really do learn a lot about yourself. And yeah, so I was just like, wow, okay, this is another tool to like heal some trauma or some, for myself, I mean, learning how to
for sure.
so
Yeah. And like drama therapy. So drama therapy specifically is usually one-to-one. So you might, when they do therapy on TV shows, you often will see somebody stepping into role as your mother so that you can tell your mother what you're really thinking or whatever.
Ooh.
So that's a kind of dramatized version of what drama therapy really is. But essentially it's an opportunity to have the hard conversations, go through different hypothetical situations and scenarios in a safe place, so that you're basically like, it's trial and error without the risks associated with trial and error in real life.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of doing drama as a high school kid or as a kid, right? Is that you get to live all these real world scenarios and see multiple possible outcomes and think, oh, you know what? It maybe isn't that scary to try new things and to do things and take risks and have these hard conversations. And that's kind of what drama therapy encourages.
I like that. I love that. Wow. Like I didn't even think about putting those two together. And it really does allow you to like kind of step out of who you are and, step into another role. And then also maybe address like the person or the situation that is making you uncomfortable or is too hard. And then it's not like the real situation. So it kind of takes out that anxiety a little bit,
Yeah.
And I feel like mental health too is something that, I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes with teenagers, it's like, you're like, oh, they're raised, right? Like they're good. They're good. You got to let them, like at some point, I feel like you have to get off the field and just kind of be on the sidelines and let them do their own thing, but you still have to guide them. But I'm really hyper aware of mental health, especially like kind of trying to keep an eye on I have a teenager, I have a 16-year-old, and especially what happened like a couple of years ago. I had like a happy-go-lucky, just regular kid. He was kind of quirky. He hates when I say that, he has like a real dry, like funny sense of humor. And then all of a sudden, what happened a couple of years ago, the C word, I don't want, we don't have to have that conversation, but, I just saw like a significant change in his demeanor and how he was. And so as soon as we could get him back into school, we put him back into school, even though we were conservative across the board and everywhere else in our life. And it took a while for him to snap out of it. And I'm still, when you're a teenager, you feel everything really heavy, everything feels heavy, even though it's, and it's hard to get out of you kind of have like this, like these blinders on, right? A little bit. And yeah, so I'm very hyper aware of consciously like making sure that my teenager's okay without him being like, oh, you're so annoying. Stop bothering me. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's exciting that you work with teens and, in the classroom. Yeah. So in the high school.
Yeah.
So how do you connect with teenagers? Like, how do you work with them? Is it just in drama and theater, or it's also in like a classroom setting?
Yeah. So I teach drama as well. So, I mean, there's like regular drama classes. I also run our musical theater program, and
Yeah.
And I also teach English and I'm also a counselor. So, I mean, I see students in a lot of different capacities, and school is one of the best places to connect with teenagers because you see them at their best and you see them at their worst. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, like as a counselor, when I'm seeing students, I'll see them maybe once or twice a week. But when I'm their teacher, I see them every single day for multiple hours over the week. And so
Right.
you get a much better sense of how they're functioning. You see their interactions with peers, you see how they're doing in other subjects, you get word from your colleagues about how they're doing. And so you have a much better like broad scope of how kids are doing.
Right.
And quite often it's, you see this like almost privileged, really inside look into what's going on in kids' lives. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to see it's so different than what they might present as at home or when they're at whatever their favorite hobby is with a group of friends. It's so different.
Yeah.
Um, and really like everybody thinks every time I say, oh, I teach high school, everybody's like, oh, you're so brave. And the reality is that like, yeah, they can be shitheads sometimes.
Totally.
There's no question about it. But if you're, just pretty real and honest about who you are as well, and there's this like guarded, well, I have to be this perfect role model. And that's not reality.
Yeah.
And so when we're trying to be these perfect role models for young people, what we're really doing is setting an absolutely unachievable standard, and kids can never match that. And so then you have kids who feel like they have to lie, they have to do things kind of underhanded, or they have to cheat or whatever to try to reach this like role model goal that we're setting for them.
Yeah.
And when you're just a real human who makes mistakes and you say, oh yeah, I shit the bed there and sorry
Yeah.
about
Right.
that. And,
Right.
and you own it for what it is, then all of a sudden they feel like they can too. And mistakes don't feel like the end of the world anymore.
Yeah. That's a really valid thought process, and I totally agree with you. My husband was like, our kids are never going to get away with anything because we did all of it. Between the two of us, we were like not that good. We were bad. And then but probably could have been worse. And with my teenager, as he got older, he was like, he jokes around and he's like, yeah, I was smoking alcohol and drinking pot. And I'm like, you're so funny, haha. Like,
Marijuana
yeah.
tablets.
Yeah, like something like that. Like he just is joking around about it. And I'm
Totally.
like, yeah, right. And then I said to him, like, if you're gonna, I mean, you're gonna be exposed to it. If you're gonna like,
Mhm.
partake and sample some stuff, like you might as well just like let me know about it so that I'm aware of it, because I'd rather have you tell me about it than find out about it. And
Mhm.
then you're gonna be in, I always say like double trouble, because you might as well just let us know. And he's like, wow, I'm really surprised. We were walking on the beach too, and we had this conversation, and just kind of like, I don't know, it just came up organically.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm really surprised that you are saying this to me. I was like, expecting you to like, lecture me. And I'm like, disappointment's overrated. And, you might as well just be upfront with your kids. I
And
mean,
those organic conversations are absolutely the best conversations to
totally.
have,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
when they just come up really naturally. And when, I have kids say that kind of thing to me all the time, where like I used to work in addictions treatment, and I would have a kid who I knew had relapsed and was high. And so they'd come in and I'd say, hey, like, do you have anything you want to tell me about? And they'd be like, no, I don't want to tell you anything. And I'm like, look, man, like, it's real obvious. Like you're not fooling anybody here. I
Right.
know what's up. And like then once you just lay it on the table and you say like, hey, in the future, if you tell me that you've relapsed or that you're about to relapse or that something's about to happen, I can actually maybe help you with that, as
Right.
opposed to like you being afraid of me or feeling like there's going to be some consequence.
Yeah.
And the biggest consequence is the fact that they're beating themselves up over it.
Yes. Yeah. And they're probably battling something else that took them to
Totally.
a place that, made them feel like they needed to numb or escape, or, or
100%.
felt like they had to keep up with other kids that are doing stuff, or,
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, I remember I'm doing talk therapy right now as a grown up. And I remember I tried to do a little bit of talk therapy when I was in high school, because I was going through like a tough situation, or I'd had a tough situation early on. And then I was like trying to address it in high school, but like there was a stigma back then. And I
Mhm.
really like that there's like an open conversation about a lot of different things, not just mental health, a lot of stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I keep telling my teenager, I'm like, if there's anything ever bothering you, just let me know.
Mhm.
Just talk to me about it, because chances are I've been through it, or chances are your dad's been through it, or chances are we can figure out a way to get you to someone to talk to if you don't want to talk to
Mhm.
us about it.
Mhm.
And it's so that's really a really cool thing that you're doing, that like you're opening the door for teenagers to have a conversation with grown-ups, and you also help other teachers, right? And
Mhm.
educate other teachers, and to help them facilitate a better environment for students so that the teachers can, you know, do what you're doing basically.
Yeah. So one of the things that I hear about the most often in therapy with young people is how re-traumatizing school is for them and how traumatizing school can be for them.
Oh my
And
God.
that's often because teachers unintentionally shame or blame or make them feel inadequate in some way. And they're just constantly overwhelmed when they go into certain classes. And it's not that these teachers are intentionally positioning students this way or making them feel this way,
Right.
but that's the result of not understanding trauma. That's the result of not understanding mental health.
Yeah.
And when you have a kid who's sitting there having a panic attack, everybody thinks panic attacks have to look one way, that it's
Mhm.
obvious and that it's visible. And that's not how mental health works. It is such a spectrum and it's a soft science, so there's no like hard and fast, this is what mental health is going to look like and this is what it's going to be like across the board. And so a lot of educators don't know what to look for and they don't know how to respond when it's in their space.
Yeah.
So my goal is to like offer resources for teachers to start to educate themselves on some of this, offer training so that teachers know, okay, this is what trauma is, and this is how I can be trauma informed. These are ways that I can manage behavior, ways that I can manage mental health in my classroom without traumatizing or re-traumatizing my students, because
Right.
it happens so unintentionally and so easily. Like it's
Yeah.
so easy to do.
Well, that, and I have like some of my teacher friends are kind of like they have like 30 kids, right? They have
Mm-hmm.
25 to 30 kids. So they need everybody to cooperate in the
Mm-hmm.
same way. And if one kid is not cooperating, sometimes they don't have the energy or the time, or, to be able to like set aside the 25 kids, and work on
Mm-hmm.
just this one kid. But, if they have the tools in place to be able to
Mm-hmm.
facilitate an environment or facilitate it, some way to help that kid.
Yeah. And that's actually it. Exactly. Like you said, it's the environment, like creating an environment that is responsive as opposed to reactive makes it so that you don't have to set aside the 25 kids to respond to the one. You
Yeah.
can actually make sure that this is a space where students know if they need to step out for a few minutes, that's fine. If they need to get water, that's fine. You build in break times and you build in mindfulness, and it's actually just part of your curriculum as opposed to something that you have to do off the side of your desk while you're also
Right.
trying to deliver curriculum.
Oh, that's interesting. I had to actually have a conversation with my youngest teacher, because he like has like a swallowing thing and he has CP, but it's more like lower versus upper and whatever.
Mhm.
And he's cognitively fit and fine and sound. But, sometimes like if he's having a snack at the desk, he needs to have water with him. And then he also has
Mhm.
some sensory, like, some, and yeah. So I had to say to her at the meeting, I was like, he really does need to have access to his water. If you don't want him to have his
Mhm.
water on his desk, because it's the condensation is going to get everything wet, and they have to have all their water by the sink. Like, he needs to be able to sit closer to the sink to be able to like have access to the water. And it
Mhm.
needs to be an option. Like, it can't be, but I also know that the teacher's like, okay, that's fine. But then you have the other kid, you have Susie going, well, why does he get to get up to get water? Or
Mhm.
why does, so if you incorporated a different strategy, then you wouldn't have to worry about that,
Yeah. And if you
right?
set up your entire class from the very beginning, from day one, to acknowledge that equal and fair are not the same thing.
Okay, I like
Equal
that.
is everybody getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need.
Yeah,
And so one
I like
person's
that.
needs is different than somebody else's needs. And if you set that up and you have that open, transparent conversation, I think at any age, there's this assumption that you can't be transparent with younger kids. And I think you can be totally open with them and have these
Yeah.
conversations and start having them early, so that like the only reason we can't have it with those kids now is because we've never done it before. So
Right.
the more that we're having those conversations, the more they're going to understand it. And then you won't have Susie who's sitting there saying, well, why does he get water and I don't? Because she's going to understand that, well, what's fair is that student needs water on their desk and I don't need water on my desk right now.
Right. Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
also, like, what, I mean, why can't we build it into our class that every student can have access to water at any point that they need to? Because
Yeah.
why do we need to know specifically that a student has a specific mental health issue or physical issue, physiological issue where
Yeah.
they need to have water? Why can't they just have water on their desk all the time?
Right.
Water is an incredible miracle fluid. And I say this to when they're having any kind of anxiety, any kind of emotional response to anything. Do you need a drink of water? Why don't you go get some water? It
Oh,
is a
really?
quick distraction. And when we're in an anxious state, we build up cortisol really fast. And we actually need water to flush the cortisol. Otherwise, we sit with it.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love that.
And so, if we've got a group of kids who don't have access to water whenever they want throughout the day, we're looking actually at a lot more behavior issues in the long run because they are experiencing things like anxiety. They don't have an easy and really brief distraction like taking a drink of water.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to use water on the desk as a tool for every student in the class to self-regulate.
Wow, I love that. I always want my kids to have water. Sorry, my neighbors are texting me.
Oh, good.
One of the neighbors' dogs actually escaped, not to like break from
Oh,
conversation, just like
no.
broke off the line. And then, yeah, they were like down the road and almost got hit by a car. So we all like
Oh,
activated,
no.
SOS like on the messenger, and everybody
Yeah.
like, rush to rescue. But
Oh, God.
anyways, side note, I love that because I am a big water advocate too. Like I go everywhere with water. My kids all
Mm-hmm.
have reusable water bottles with them filled with
Mm-hmm.
ice so that it melts and stays cold all day. And I was really frustrated to know that he didn't have access to his water. I always thought that they could have water on their desks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is like a really good, I might even bring that up in the next IEP meeting. I might even
Yeah.
say, water is therapeutic, and it happens to actually, I've learned that it lowers cortisol levels when you're having like a freak out moment. And that's
Yeah.
true. Like I have a special needs kid. So he's 8 going on 9. He
Mm-hmm.
had to be held back. So we had to deal with that a little bit. And it was kind of like a blessing in disguise that he was
Mm-hmm.
able to stay home for part of the year because of COVID. And so we
Right.
delayed putting him in person. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. But, you know, I have to tell you, as much as schools have the best intentions to be able to provide as much as they can for kids with special needs, still they have a lot of students they have to deal with. So, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, if you just built in these different tools and took it an extra step,
Mm-hmm.
then they wouldn't maybe have to put so much time and effort into activating these programs. Not that they're not necessary, but it might just sort of smooth out the edges,
And
and
they
it's
they
good
don't
for
need to.
parents too.
Totally. And they don't need to be as necessary. And this is the problem, is that we are reliant on classroom management when what we should be reliant on is relationship management.
Yeah, I like
And
that
so if
too.
we're building meaningful relationships with our students and we have worked in ways that students can self-regulate, and we teach them what self-regulation means, and we make sure that they
Yeah,
are able to access the bathroom whenever they need to, they can access water whenever they need to, that they are treated like human beings as
right,
opposed to compliant folks in our classroom,
right.
then we actually have a lot more opportunity to deliver our curriculum. Because if a kid asks to go to the bathroom and they're told that they have to wait 10 more minutes because you're in the middle of a lesson, are they thinking about the lesson, or are they actually just thinking about when they get to go to the bathroom?
Exactly. And then it's gonna set the teacher up for the kid kind of rubbing them the wrong way, meaning like they're
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna be pissed at the teacher for not
Mm-hmm.
letting them go to the bathroom, especially if they have like, maybe an accident and then they're
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed. And then, I've actually known of, kids that's happened to in school, they have like an accident because they have like a medical condition or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And, and then it's like, well, did you go number 1 or number 2? Doesn't matter. They
It
had an
doesn't
accident.
matter.
Just
Yeah.
like deal
Yeah.
with, help them deal with it as under the radar as possible. That
Mm-hmm.
happened with my youngest, and it was just a little bit frustrating. So I love that
Yeah.
like you're trying to help educate parents and students and teachers to create the environments to reduce all the
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary like not drama, I mean it's theater, but like but I mean for lack of better word or whatever.
But that
So
is what it is, because like that's just the reality, is that teachers are really overworked and really burnt out
yeah,
by what it is that they have to do. And in having these kind of classroom management techniques that more often than not fail because they aren't actually creating safety for students, then you have teachers who just feel like they're shitty teachers.
yeah. Right. Or they feel like they can't focus on the other 25 or actually
Yeah,
get through their lessons because they're so overwhelmed and spun out about dealing with like Johnny, who's freaking out.
totally.
I have a friend
And
of
these
mine
are
who's,
teachers who could be great teachers, like who
yeah,
are likely really good teachers, and they just feel like they are not good teachers anymore because they feel like they aren't, able to deliver the material the way that it needs to be done. They aren't feeling like they're living in their profession the way that they have wanted to and the way that they've sought out, because like you said, they've got 25 other kids. They just feel like they're dropping the ball for all of them.
right. Or they've lost their passion. Cause a lot of times, like
Yeah.
nurses and teachers, like they have